Okay, awesome. So let's dive into it because I have a lot of information to share with you guys over the next 30 minutes. So, a hard truth that we have about the market right now is that interest rates are at their highest level that they've been in 20 years. And I know a lot of you joining us on this call are active in the current market, either as a real estate professional or as a buyer or a seller. And the really cold part about interest rates being as high as they are right now is that home prices haven't cooled off as well. So we're dealing with a climate where affordability is really impacted by interest rates being higher, and due to the shortage of inventory of houses available, home prices are also high. And the part that really is the icing on the cake, making this all seem very, very ice cold, is we went from having the best interest rates ever, the lowest they'd ever been in history, like in the history of interest rates, in the history of real estate, ever lowest interest rates in 2020 and 2021, and then less than 2 years later at their highest point in 20 years. So if you're active in the market and you feel like this has been a wild ride, then just know you're not alone. And it's true, it has been a wild ride. And while we think it'll become a little bit less whiplashy over the next 18 to 24 months, we also have to come to terms with the fact that rates will be higher for that time span. So we want to help you navigate that and know how you can put together a great deal anyways. Keep in mind, when someone gets pre-approved, they're typically shopping for several months. It takes a little bit to find the right house that meets your needs, to put together the right deal, and to get your offer accepted. What's challenging about the market right now is that on a week-by-week basis, your pre-approval amount is changing dramatically based on interest rates moving. So being at this webinar and being in close contact with your real estate team, your realtor, and your lender will serve you really well, because it'll help you keep a pulse on the market and also know when things have moved and how they will impact you. So pat yourself on the back for taking the time to spend 30 minutes with us right now, because it will help you in the long run towards your real estate investing goals. Always on these webinars, we start with the market update. So in doing so, I have to continue with my cold, hard truths and explain if these rates are here to stay. If we're looking at interest rates in the 6s or 7s for the next 2 years, how does that impact the narrative for everything else? Because just a few months ago, we were thinking that we would see the Federal Reserve cut their Fed funds rate, maybe at the end of this year, but definitely next year. And in just the last 2 weeks, that story has completely changed. I no longer see any economists coming out and predicting a rate cut anymore, and the Fed futures market is not banking on it at all. So let me explain why these higher interest rates are what we're dealing with right now and could be dealing with for the short-term near future. The Fed has a dual mandate, and they only focus on inflation and unemployment. That's it. That's all they care about. That's all they look at. Right now, inflation is still high and employment still looks really solid. So the only tool that the Fed has is monetary policy, which really just means the only tool they have is taking interest rates up or down. And if they want to combat inflation and the only tool they have is to take interest rates up to bring inflation down, then they're also looking at, well, what's the impact it's having on unemployment numbers? So far, unemployment numbers and the labor market has held really strong, at least when you look at it on a surface level. So it's giving the Fed more ammunition to continue tackling inflation aggressively and to continue hiking interest rates and then leaving them elevated for a longer time until inflation is truly under control. That is the only two things they're looking at, guys. We feel a lot of other impacts in the economy. We look at consumer debt. We see what's happening in the housing market. We feel what's happening with hiring freezes and bonuses not being paid this year. The Fed is not looking at that. They're only looking at inflation and unemployment. So this Friday's jobs report will be a big market mover. If it comes in weaker than expectations, we might get some relief. If it comes in showing that the labor market is still really strong, then we're probably looking at another rate hike from the Fed on their short-term Fed funds rate. But aside from interest rates, this has implications not just for real estate, but outside of the housing market. And I want you guys to be paying attention to those as well. In terms of concerns outside of housing and with the economy as a whole right now, as the Fed has been really aggressive in hiking their short-term funds rate to tackle inflation, people have speculated, will this result in a full-blown recession? Will it be a mild recession? Will there be a recession at all? This is what you hear when people are debating, is there going to be a soft landing or is this going to be painful? I personally think the odds of a soft landing are diminishing, but let's look at what we're actually worried about. Like, what are the real things that could happen rather than you guys just relying on my opinion? I think access to capital could get pretty ugly in the coming months. I've already noticed some of the bigger banks removing HELOCs from their product offerings. And we could see that even people who have a HELOC, which is a home equity line of credit against their home, we could see that they just find out that their limit's been decreased. Same thing on their credit cards. Consumer debt has passed $1 trillion. This consumer debt is a big reason why inflation has been so sticky. As the cost of goods went up, Americans didn't stop spending, they just started swiping. And that's why we saw credit card debt skyrocket. Now that credit card limits are hitting their max, we should see spending slow down at a faster pace and inflation start falling quicker. That's the hope anyways. But credit card rates could go up at the same time that limits are going down and HELOCs are being pulled, because banks are going to have a lending problem similar to what they had earlier this year when we saw those regional banks like Silicon Valley Bank and First Republic Bank close. They basically ran into a shortage of money because people came in and were pulling their money. Banks make money by lending. They make money on interest. When you go in and deposit your money at the bank, they take that money and they try to use it in a different way to make money by giving out loans. Well, a lot of banks, especially regional banks, have a lot of their portfolio tied up in commercial real estate. Commercial real estate is not what we're necessarily focused on this webinar every month. We focus on residential housing that you could live in. Commercial is like malls or business buildings or office buildings. There's a problem that's looming over all of our heads with commercial real estate in that commercial loans are typically given with a 5-year time span. So you have your interest rate and your terms fixed for 5 years. A bunch of those are reaching the 4th or 5th year of that term right now, and they started with interest rates in the 2s or 3s. So when those rates adjust to current market rates, the payments will triple in some cases. Well, that's going to have implications, right? Because the commercial building holder, the commercial loan holder, now had their payment go up maybe double or triple. Triple is very realistic. What are they going to do? They might translate that to higher rents to their tenants. So the fitness studio that's renting space from them or the coffee shop will have to increase the cost of their membership or the cost of the products they sell down to the consumer to cover their higher rent. Or they may fold. They may leave because they can't take such a large increase in their business's rent. If they leave, then what does the building owner do? That commercial building owner has a vacancy. So now they're not getting any rent and their payment is 3 times as much. Not good, right? They'll either fire sale the building to the best price they could get, or they might have to foreclose on it. If banks have a bunch of bad commercial debt on their hands, we could see another liquidity crisis that's worse than the one we saw earlier this year, where they don't have capital on hand, and it could be really bad. And it's something that everyone should be watching because, one, the really savvy investors on this webinar are thinking, ooh, I should be watching commercial to get a good deal because maybe I could buy a commercial building since residential isn't penciling as well. But also, it might lead to credit tightening in other areas because if the banks have bad debt on their portfolio, they might be less likely to give out a personal loan, or they might be less likely to offer you a HELOC, or they might cut the limit on your HELOC before you can spend that capital so they can keep it. Cash is also not going to be trash. And this will be more positive because I realized that was probably a little bit scary. But one good thing about interest rates being higher is that your money in the bank is earning better interest too. So you can take out a 3-month CD and put your money in it and get over 5% interest back on that right now. That's awesome. Like when interest rates were low, everybody said cash is trash. You got to spend your money. It's not earning any return. And inflation is making the value of the dollar less. Not the story right now. If you are having to pause your home search or you're just waiting to find the right house and it looks like it's going to take maybe 6 months to a year, move your down payment funds into a high yield savings account or consider even tying them up in a CD so that it can make you some money while you are watching the market. Sandy's going to dive into some of the strategies that we're seeing work really well for buyers right now and give you more tangible stuff that you can use and maybe implement into your buying strategy right this minute.
Hi, everyone. Yes, so we've been talking a lot about buy downs, and I'm sure you've seen a lot about that online. And so a strategy that we've been seeing is really effective is a 2-1 buy down. So a temporary buy down where your interest rate is temporarily lower, typically in years 1 and 2. Right now, though, with rates being higher, it's making more sense, surprisingly, to do fixed rate buy downs in a lot of cases, or even a combo of the two strategies. Also, we want to get into seller concessions and go over some more details on that. And then new construction, where we're seeing a lot of opportunity, specifically with a new condo project in Carson City. So we'll get into all that good stuff. Okay, so this scenario was really interesting. We had a client looking at either offering less than list price on a home or asking for a seller concession to do an interest rate buy down. So lots of times it feels more sensible to ask for a reduction in the price of the home, right? Because it's always good to get a deal and pay less for something. But it's really important to run the numbers because as you can see here, the interest rate could be lowered by over 1%, almost a full 1.5%. And when we look onto the next slides, it's really interesting when you look at the payment. So this is the savings over the next 5 years. And you can see that in this client, this is a jumbo loan. He would be saving over $62,000 over the next 5 years by asking for a seller credit instead of that price reduction. So really interesting. And then if you look at the next slide, this is a shorter time frame. Lots of times when we're running these scenarios for clients, we are considering what the interest rates are likely to look like in the future, right? Because they are going to trend down. We just don't know exactly when. So when you're considering how to structure your deal now, you also want to consider what rates might look like in the future, because maybe you can get a rate for free in the future that you might pay for today. So in this scenario, we took the future time frame down to only 18 months. So it still saves him a ton of money. So by still using a $72,000 seller credit, he's saving almost $28,000 over the next year and a half. And that's huge because that's taking into account the cost of buying the rate down, the interest over the life of the loan, and all those complicated things. But it just made sense. The permanent buy down really served him well, even if rates come down in the next, year and a half and he refinances quickly. So the point here is to run the numbers on every scenario and not just listen to speculation or, do whatever you think feels good. It's like good to really look at the math and analyze the deal. Okay, next up, seller concessions. So when you're structuring this deal and asking the seller for a seller credit, you have to go within the confines of what your financing strategy looks like. So for different loan types and different down payments, you'll have a max of different seller credits that you can ask for. So this chart breaks it all out. You can see conventional loans depend on whether it's your first home, a second home, an investment property, and then depending on your down payment. So a conventional loan with less than a 10% down payment, you would be looking at a max seller concession of 3%, and that's of the purchase price. When you put a larger down payment down, you can ask for a larger seller concession. FHA is capped at 6%, and that's a flat regardless of your down payment. VA is capped at 4%, but something also very interesting with VA is you can actually use the seller credit to pay off credit cards or judgments or different things to help the buyer actually qualify to get into the house. So you can be a little more creative and strategic with the VA seller credit also. And then USDA, we're looking at a 6% seller credit. So seller credits aren't new. Like before our current rate environment, we still saw them a lot. Typically, they would get added after the inspection reports came back and the buyer wanted to fix something and the seller didn't want to do it themselves. So they would offer this credit as a way to reduce the cash out of pocket that the borrower had to come up with at closing. So they're paying less for the house up front, gives them more room to pay for repairs or something like that. But you can see in that other scenario, we're getting creative and being able to use them for lowering monthly payments, as well as cash out of pocket up front. Oh, one more thing on seller credits. It's also important to know like what this can be used for. So it cannot go towards a down payment. Seller credits can only be used to cover closing costs or interest rate buy downs. So that will be things like your loan origination fee, your interest rate buy down. This could be temporary or permanent. You can pay for appraisals, inspections, title company fees, property taxes, homeowners insurance. So you can even prepay some of those things for your escrow account. You could prepay some months of HOA. So you can get a little creative with paying for items up front at closing, and then also prepaying some things a little bit into the future so that your monthly is a little bit lower in the when you first move into the house. Okay, cool. So all this being said, you still may be running into some sticker shock on your monthly payment just when you see your payment at these current rates. So this is why your cash flow is really important. And something too to keep in mind is new construction. So new construction builders are having inventory and they're ready to move and sell. So we don't necessarily love telling you to go check out Lennar, Toll Brothers, because they do have in-house lenders that usually aren't the most experienced and also not usually looking out for your best interest. But the truth is that new construction is a huge opportunity for buyers. So they're offering some interest rate incentives that are just really magical right now. And even the project that we are the preferred lender for in Carson City, Silvercrest condos, you guys should definitely go check it out if you haven't had a chance already. They're beautiful, really well done. I want to move there. And we're putting together some really good deals for buyers looking at those properties. So feel free to check it out, and maybe Shawani can put the link in the chat. But yeah, it's really an all-around win when you see the prices and when you can get a good deal negotiated on your new builds. And if you're not sure if the builder's lender is looking to pull one over on you, feel free to send it to our team and we'll look at it for free and tell you quickly if it's a good deal, if they're hiding fees anywhere in your loan estimate, or if we can match or beat it. So all this being said, it's a really good opportunity there in new construction. And Niley is going to dive into the next part.
Thank you, Sandy. So next, we are going to be talking about your monthly cash flow. So what we've been hearing is right now people's money is tight because people have been spending, they have gone through their savings, and payments are a lot higher for properties that they're purchasing. And there is that price shock where you're like, crap, I was spending $2,400 on a monthly rent payment, and maybe it's going to go up to $2,600, where I can now get a house that I own. I can paint, I can make holes on the wall, I can blast my music, I can pick up my neighbors, I can have fixed expenses for $3,000, but there is still that price shock. So what we're having a lot of clients do is we are now going a step further and we are diving deeper by looking at monthly cash flow. And this is something that everyone needs to be doing because things are going to get tight. And we just want to make sure that we are getting into the best practices. So something that we are doing is we obviously, when we're qualifying our clients, we qualify them based on their own complication income calculation based off of their gross income. So that's before taxes are paid out, Social Security, any benefits, any 401ks, IRAs, anything like that. So when we are sitting down with our clients, when we do get a little bit of pushback, or we get people that are like, I just don't know. I know the system says I qualify for that $3,500 mortgage payment, but I'm not comfortable with that. So that's where we are diving deeper and we are having them look at their monthly expenses. A really good way to do this is by going over your monthly bank statements to see what's coming in, what's going out, and really taking a look at your net pay from your paycheck. So just really sitting down and creating a budget, or we can always sit down and help you. We're not financial experts in regards to managing your expenses. You know what you have to pay for, you know what you're liable for, but we're always happy to provide our expertise and our advice with zero judgment. And you just need to look at your income each month and see if you're able to increase it. See if you're able to get a raise. Right now is the best time to really leverage anything that you can at work with asking for extra hours, asking for a raise if you've been killing it, looking for promotions, and also looking at side hustles and seeing what else you can do to generate more income and have it come from different streams. And also, you need to be looking at the money that is going out. Is your rent fixed, or is your lease coming up? And is there a potential for your rental payments to be going up, and factoring that into your monthly budget and looking at what's fixed and looking at what's a variable cost? So, your rent would obviously be a fixed cost because it's going to be the same. And also looking at like your car payments, your cell phone bill, your student loans that everyone is going to start paying again this month. So, also, and then what are like your variable costs? A lot of that is like getting your nails done, getting your hair done, going to gym or membership subscriptions. Is that really necessary, and is it adding value to your life? Versus maybe we all don't need the 5 different streaming services to watch 5 different shows. Maybe that's not necessary. You cut out $100 easily there. And lastly, also just really diving deep into discretionary and disappearing money. So, what are you really spending your money on? Is it going shopping and eating out every single weekend and blowing $100 at sushi? Do you really need to eat sushi 6 times a month? No, you don't. Maybe we start using that extra money that's disappearing, that's not doing anything for you. And let's try to put that into your monthly mortgage payment. Another thing that we've been having our clients do that are just not ready to push and make an offer on a home is we're having them practice having that monthly mortgage payment. So if they're used to paying $2,400 right now and they're looking at a monthly mortgage payment of $3,000, we tell them practice having this payment of you paying every month $3,000, and that $600 extra, put that into a savings account. So you're automatically saving money. And this is a really good practice to implement so that when you do make that commitment, you're not going to have that price shock with your new monthly mortgage payments. And we know you can make them because one, our system tells them we can. And also you're spending that $600 anyways. So it's just a really good time to just be reflective and look at what you're spending, look at what you're doing, look at what habits you can change, and implement healthier habits into your everyday life. And in summation, we're going to go over a success story. I had a client that I closed with Lennar. He was looking at resale properties and wasn't loving anything that he was liking, and the payment was still pretty high. A lot of the properties he was in that price point under the $500,000, which is really competitive. So he wasn't seeing much luck with getting a seller credit to offset his closing costs or do an interest rate buy down. So he decided to go look at new homes. The specific house that he ended up purchasing had already fallen out of contract. And in order to place a offer on the property, he had to get pre-approved with Lennar's preferred lender. And they could not approve him. So the listing agent gave me a call and was like, "Hey, Naila, I know we worked together before and you did a great job last time, and I want to trust your pre-approval, but I need to know that this client is actually qualified because our lender can't do it. They don't understand how you did it. If you can prove to me that he's qualified, I will promise you that we will reduce the purchase price to the price that he can qualify at, and also offer you that $20,000 incentive that we were offering if they went with our preferred lender." So I gave them our pre-approval. I went over it with her and she said, "Okay, perfect." They lowered the purchase price $10,000 and they gave him $20,000. And in his specific circumstance, we were looking at the 2-1 buy down, and we were looking at the permanent buy down for the interest rate. And with him, he didn't feel comfortable with having his payment go up in a year or 2 years. So we did a permanent buy down, and the rest of the money we used to offset his closing costs. And his payment is actually now a lot lower than the other house that he was looking at that was a resale. So there are opportunities out there. You just need to make sure you're looking at all the different options and seeing what makes the most sense for you. So if you want us to look at any scenario, please, please, please do not hesitate. There is never any dumb question. We are here to be a resource to you, to your friends, and to your family. So if you want to get together with us, please book a one-on-one strategy meeting with us, and you can scan the QR code and schedule us.
So when we started these webinars on a monthly basis, what we wanted to convey to you guys was that we were in a market that was changing very quickly, that you needed to be in touch real time and keep a pulse on the market, because in a couple weeks, it's a whole different game. And that has really been driven home even to us as we put this together every month and we think about what's been working for our clients over the last 3 to 4 weeks. The other thing that I hope you take away from today's webinar is that every house is actually its own market right now. So while we have clients getting into a situation where we're up against 5 other offers on a property, we also have clients making an offer on a luxury home where they can ask for a $70,000 credit. Every house is going to be different, and every house is going to need its own total cost analysis to make sure that, one, you're coming in at a fair price, that you can afford monthly and on a cash to close basis. And that, two, if you are negotiating with the seller, you're putting those dollars, those discount dollars, to the best use possible that matches with your short-term and long-term goals. And then lastly, that yes, higher interest rates are here to stay, but take a good look at your finances. It'll serve you for what's happening even outside of the real estate market, and see if maybe some of the money that just, we're never going to be the Dave Ramsey preachers who say that if you cut your $5 latte a day, you'll be able to buy a house. I don't think that cutting Starbucks is going to get you there, but I do think there's money that just disappears every month, and I have nothing to show for it at the end of the month. Like if it bought me a designer bag, cool, but it didn't. Like I just spent it. It just disappeared in restaurants and on the weekend. And maybe I would be willing to reinvest that money into a higher housing expense if my real estate team, my lender, my realtor showed me the return on investment that would get me. So that's what we're committed to doing. Until interest rates come back down, let's help the people who are serious about buying a home. And I know that's many of you on this call. Let us show you how we can put a path together, even if the interest rate and the monthly payment is a little higher than you had been planning for. So like Nayeli said, please use this link, scan the QR code. We'd love to sit down with you individually and go over your finances. And please keep attending these monthly webinars so we can keep giving you a pulse on the market.